For today's tutorial, I'm going to show you how to attach your wheels and axles to the chassis with axle brackets. The axle brackets here, I've got two variations, one that's going to be made of cardboard and one that's made with a straw. And it's important to note that, of course, these are only two variations, so you should experiment and try to find the best possible idea. The plastic straws here, I've got some limitations to begin with. They are obviously a fixed size, where with the cardboard brackets that I'm about to make, you can make it variable. It can have different sizes for the different axles. So I'm just going to take these out and show you how to attach them. I've already attached two and I need to attach two more. So with that, I'm going to show you how to make the plastic straw axle bracket. And the first thing to note is that when we have our axles on either side, our axle brackets on either side here, we need the axles to be straight, going straight or parallel across our chassis. Otherwise, you're going to get, if you have them on an angle, you're going to get a vehicle that turns. And we all know that the most effective or efficient method of going from A to B is straight. That's what we want. That means you, very importantly, have to measure. When I've put on my first bracket here, I will then need to measure where is the center of that on the other side. And you can see that I've marked both of these here already. I've marked for this one here, I've marked based on the center of that, where the hole is, not where the bracket is, because that could be different sizes, but the hole. And the same again with the straw. If it's a bigger straw or whatever, it needs to be the center of the hole. So mark that on both sides here. To attach the straw, you'll need to use a hot glue. And it's important to note that you don't attach the hot glue, or don't put the hot glue straight onto the straw. It's plastic and it will melt. What you'll do is you take your hot glue and you put just a small amount along the line on the chassis, and then very quickly transfer the straw onto that. And again, want to make sure it's straight on your line so that the two brackets are lined up. The positive thing about hot glue is that it dries fast. The negative thing about it is it's not strong. So if you are going to be depending on your axle bracket to have pressure on it, for instance, the axle that is attached to the elastic band is going to have some pressure on it being pulled, you might find that this axle bracket is going to fail on you. It potentially will break. Not always, but it can. However, this bracket here, which I'm going to demonstrate how to attach, is a lot stronger. And how we attach that is we've got to cut ourselves a piece of cardboard. Doesn't really matter on the shape so much, but you need a bit of space where the chassis can be attached to it, and then some space where obviously the hole will go. To make that hole, you can use a hole punch. We have one that looks like this, that you simply can line up and punch the cardboard with. From that, I take some PVA glue, put it on one side where I'm going to attach it, and then with my marked line, I'm going to attach that here, and making sure that I've got the center of my hole as perfectly on that, have that line centered. And then to help with this drying, we're just going to squeeze that together with our fingers, maybe push away a bit of the glue there. And when that dries, then that will be quite a strong kind of bracket. Now, before obviously you go any further, while it's drying, you can actually test to see if it's running nice and straight, parallel. So these brackets here, I've made them, they're big enough for a thicker axle here, and when I put that through here, I can check and see if it's running parallel, and I can see that that's pretty good. That looks nice and straight. If I need to make adjustments before the glue dries, I can always push the bracket either way a little bit. And that's the positive side also to the white glue, is that it doesn't dry too fast, so you can make adjustments. If it's nice and straight and perfect, then you just let that dry. Shouldn't take more than 5 to 10 minutes. If you hold pressure on it, it will be faster. The same goes with the straw. You want to make sure that that's correct. However, in this case, it will dry already. So if you need to adjust it, you'll need to break away the axle bracket again. And in this case, I've lined it up nicely, as you can see there. And in both cases, the idea is that the axle should spin freely and easily inside the axle bracket. Now, very quick note about the axles and wheels. The axles come in variations of materials. We have wood, we have cardboard, and then we have fiberglass. Fiberglass is the strongest, very, very strong, very flexible, but it's also the heaviest. With the cardboard is then the opposite. It's the lightest, but it's also the weakest. And then the wood is somewhere in between. So it's really up to you to decide on what you feel works best and to experiment with that. Attaching wheels. The wheels come in lots of variations. You can explore the box and see that there are caps like this, CDs, other variations, wood as well. And the most important note is that the wheels need to be fixed to the axle. They need to be fixed tightly so that when I spin the axle here, that the wheel spins with it. Okay? If it doesn't, then of course the transference of energy from the axle will not go to the wheel. It will be lost at the axle. When you're attaching the axle to the wheel, sometimes it will fit nice and perfectly like this. In this case, the hole is exactly the same size as your axle, your piece of dowel. But in most cases, it's not the right size. Therefore, it's either smaller or bigger. If it's smaller, then you need to make the hole bigger by simply drilling it. If it's a bigger hole, which is often the case, a little more difficult, you need to make the axle fill the hole. And for instance, here's a dowel and a piece of wood, and when I put that in there, you can see it spins a lot freely. But when I simply take some tape like this here, and I wrap it around just part of the axle, the part that I'm going to have inside the wheel, and I wrap it to the right amount to match the hole. Now when I push that through, it fits nice and snug, and then when I spin the axle, you can see the wheel will spin with it. So that's the idea. You need to get the wheel and the axle to be fixed together nicely. You can use things like hot glue and other things to experiment to hold them together. Of course, if you add hot glue to the axle and the wheel, and you have a lot of it, especially on the inside of the wheel that's closest to the chassis, this might cause you problems with friction when it's attached, when it's hitting the body of when it's hitting the chassis or the axle bracket. So just be aware not to put too much glue when you're working with that.